and welcome to another Biddle Saturday night. Now that the intro is done playing, you guys can talk now.
Well, I missed it, Rocco.
Well, you missed it.
I missed it.
How can
I
that
don't know
be,
what's
dude?
going.
It's your internet connection, dude. It's Australia.
No, it's user error this time, I think.
Okay.
Oh boy.
But anyway, I was struggling right before here to get a system booting into a system. I just couldn't get it to work. What happened was I had tried to install a few distros, and I don't know if you guys watched Destination Linux this past week, but I said that I had kind of like overwrote my Origin PC game drive. Well, I redid that drive, and then when I did that, all of my grubs were messed up. Like no grub would load. So, yeah. So I had fun like right before the stream because I didn't realize it until a half hour before the stream because that's the first time I rebooted. And yeah, so it was a frantic search for the right USB drive. I tried one, it had an error. I tried another, it had an error. And then I put in Ubuntu Mate, and hey, it just works.
Rocco, I don't seem to be having too many problems on Ubuntu proper, Rocco. GNOME.
GNOME?
Yeah, that's been running pretty well for me so far.
Colin,
so
I'm getting worried about you, man. Are you giving up your distro hopper ways?
No,
or?
that's on my main. I distro hop on the test laptop, so that's. Okay. But I have discovered that on Firefox sometimes some things you click on things and they don't open. Has anyone else noticed that? Is that a Firefox thing?
As a matter of fact, now that you say that, I've had a couple things in the last week that
fly swatter for the 100 bits.
You hold on. I had a couple things that wouldn't open, like buttons, specific buttons to links or something.
I've been seeing people crash, like their entire systems have been crashing with login pages to Netflix and Amazon on Firefox lately. Not sure what's up with that either.
You know what's driving me insane? Being logged out of everywhere that I go. That's driving me insane. Like, I am being logged out everywhere I go. Like, I have to log into Twitch every single time I open a browser. It's driving me insane.
You know what doesn't have that problem? Okay.
What doesn't have that problem?
Elementary.
Chrome.
Derek, what's going on?
Who did you say? Chicken? I didn't hear that.
Chrome.
Oh, Chrome. Oh,
proprietary garbage.
Oh, man.
Don't even start, Derek. go use more Hannah Montana. I can't believe you actually did that.
It wasn't that bad.
Well, in a VM, of course not.
Seamless mode for the win.
Popey's back.
I just want to know what the Hannah Montana wallpaper would be like in today.
NC-17, I'm pretty sure.
Be very interesting.
I don't know. Ask Michael Tennell. He was the one that did some changes to the Katie appearance themes.
It definitely won't work for like this channel. That's all I'm saying.
No. Demonetized.
Yeah.
Wait, I've been getting Destination Linux episodes. Wait, the live stream of Destination Linux last week was demonetized. Like, are you kidding me?
Actually, that's the one I watched. Was the live one, not the one that was normally uploaded? Is that normal these days? That's up
if you're
there
a patron.
But I'm not a patron though.
Well, why aren't you? Is the first question. And no,
we discussed this.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
I know.
What happens is when that goes, there's no like good way to do it. So in order for it to be live, YouTube leaves it up there. So we have to then one of us has to, and usually it's Michael, will download it, mark that one private, and re-upload it unlisted so that the patrons can still view the live show. So that'll remain up for a little while until we get to downloading it and unlisting it. So
have you considered like recording this like while you're streaming so that way you can transcode it to like a proper like live upload afterwards. So it'd still be the live recording, but it would be transcoded better than getting it from YouTube and then re-uploading it.
As a matter of fact, I didn't really think about that because I do record it in OBS. I mean,
it's a significantly lower quality if it's already been live streamed and then re-downloaded, because it gets like dropped heavily during streams because of, you know, like real-time file delivery, and then when you re-uploaded it, it gets retranscoded and compressed again. So if you record it while you stream, you have a little bit better control at.
I definitely record it when I stream, so I should probably do that. That would probably make it easier instead of having to download it and re-upload it. I just upload it once. Good idea, Chicken. Where have you been?
I want to do less work, Rocco. That's more sad. We're the open source community. We like to reinvent the wheel 50,000 times.
Yeah.
It's terrible because like I've got a decent understanding of all of this stuff, but yet I still don't do it.
Yeah, you should be doing it, Chicken.
Yeah, my content is nearly non-existent.
Wait till he gets that internet connection, and then he'll be off on his way.
Streaming.
Did you get it, Alan?
You finally get it?
So.
I'm waiting.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Oh my God, Leonard Pottering.
What is going on, man?
Yeah, it's all good. Set the alarm, woke up, about 5 hours sleep. It's all good. It's 5:30 in the morning. 3:30 in the morning. Yeah.
What are you doing at 3:30 in the morning?
Well, you could ask Zeb the same thing.
Yeah, Zeb, I thought you weren't going to make it tonight, brother.
Tell that to my body clock.
Oh, okay.
This went, it's 3:15. Get up. And that's it. I was awake.
Body clock.
That'll do it.
What can you do about the body clock?
Nothing.
No,
absolutely nothing.
Embrace the body clock.
Yes, that's what you could do.
Embrace the body clock.
Well, it's good to have a fellow Brit this early in the morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep now.
So you haven't tried YouTube Live? There's a YouTube Live. I don't know what that's all about. Can anyone explain that?
This is just
There's
a rebrand.
like a button on YouTube. Is it?
Yeah, but I think the YouTube Live is like just their take on like including like from mobile, you know.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's mostly like we can also do the stuff that Twitch does.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Don't use us.
We're not behind on anything at all.
No.
Like we're capable, but our UX kind of sucks.
As does our customer support, as does our infrastructure, as does our...
Matt, you're such a downer, dude.
Actually, when I was in the States a little while ago, I signed up for YouTube Red because we don't have it in the UK. So I thought, I know, I'll sign up while I'm in the States because it'll let me, because I wanted to download some videos and watch them on the plane on the way back. So I signed up and went through the dance to get it, and then downloaded some videos, watched them on the flight on the way home. Second I touched down in the UK, it basically disables all the YouTube Red functionality immediately. And then after my month, I got the thing that said, "Oh, you need to pay for your next month," or I think I had a free month or something.
Yeah.
And it said you got to pay for the next month, and then it said we're going to cancel your Google account because you haven't paid. And I thought, what? Well, normally it pays fine. And there was a screw up inside the Google payment system because I paid in America. It had some American payment in there, and then I normally pay in the UK for Google Docs, so I had a UK payment in there, and it was completely messed up. And they were going to delete my Gmail account and all my documents and everything. And I had to contact a support person. Yeah, I had to actually speak to a real human being at Google.
They do have those.
They have that?
They do have them, yeah.
Oh, wow.
If you're a paying customer, they do have them. Yeah.
Are you sure it's not just an algorithm talking back?
Well, it could have been. They did respond very quickly, so yeah, it could well have been.
So is that something that a VPN would help out in as far as having YouTube Red?
I guess, but I don't really want to have a VPN constantly open to the States.
Yeah.
Really.
I feel like it could be kind of hit or miss as well, depending on how they verify that stuff.
Well, he probably did the same thing I did. I signed up mainly just to watch the first season of Cobra Kai, and then, I canceled the subscription after that. It was actually pretty good.
Okay.
I have no idea what that is, so I didn't sign up for that. No.
It was this Karate Kid remake they did on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I think YouTube Red is pretty good only because, number one, it allows you to support the creators without having to see the ads. And the plus side is you get all the music with it. So, hey.
But I don't think it's available in the UK, which is a pain.
No,
Why is that?
It isn't.
Why is that?
Because Google are an American company and they target US first.
It's available
always.
in Australia, I'm pretty sure. It keeps annoying me about it. It keeps bugging me on my phone.
Oh, it bugs me in
Sign
the
up
UK
to
as well.
you. Does it really? So
Yeah,
maybe
totally.
so I can't join then. Oh, that's all right then.
They
So just
wanna
keep
tease
bugging me.
you.
You should test it. Try it out and see if it screws up your Google payments as well.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Pete's in the house.
Come on, Pete.
Pete doesn't have a sound working
Pete's hot. He can't hear us.
Pulse audio.
Well,
Yeah,
there.
I
Audio
was gonna
2018.
Is Simon still fixing Pulse Audio?
He's not been back on the show since.
I think he gave up on that, to be honest with you.
Not ever since Ryan had hassled him for about 2.5 hours about it.
So, before we go any further, Joe has hurt his back, I think he said somehow. So he's not going to be here tonight, but he wanted to make sure he said hi to everybody. So,
Well, I was chatting with him yesterday. Seemed all right, but he was saying he had a few back issues. But maybe it's after that video. Then
yeah, probably.
it was live with Toss. That was.
Yeah.
The problem with backs as well is they can suddenly turn really sour very, very quickly.
And I've hurt my back before. It's usually not the day of. It's usually the next day you really feel it. So
Yeah.
Well, I was
It
just
usually
talking
hits me
to
like
a friend of
today.
mine. He had back surgery. Let's see, 2 weeks ago, and then it got infected, so they had to do an emergency surgery on him.
Wow.
And they said that if they wouldn't have done this, they took him in that day and did the emergency surgery because they said that he wouldn't have made it had they not gone in that day and redone it. So
Wow.
it
That's
was
terrifying.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
messed up, man.
No good. So, Rocco, you said you're running at the moment Mate, yeah?
Well, no, I'm not running Mate. I'm running
not
Budgie.
now?
I installed Mate so
Whoa.
that I could get my glove working again.
Do I need to get Martin Wimpress on the phone?
You do that. Where's he at anyway? He should be here.
He's only
probably
about an hour
snoring.
that way.
He's probably snoring.
But Martin's probably just this second gone asleep, so he'll love you if you do that.
Yeah, hang on.
I was creating a video on the panel layouts and I was working on it, and then all of a sudden my super key wouldn't work for the menu. It would open it, but it wouldn't close it. And then I stumbled upon the fact that if you got your num lock on, it doesn't close with the super key, the main menu. So I don't know whether that's an active bug with Mate or maybe just my hardware. Don't know if anyone else has experienced that.
I can give it a try and see if it happens on
yeah.
my end.
So I'm going to have a look at their forums later and see if there is a bug about it. So it was a weird one. I kept pressing me buttons and why isn't this closing?
I've had Ubuntu Mate running on my my laptop or not my laptop, my desktop for a couple weeks now,
Yeah.
and it's been going really great.
Okay, where's Chicken and what have you done with him?
Yeah.
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 Well, see, he's back because I ordered this in the mail.
Mhm.
So I'm looking for something to put on there. And
You know what you have to do.
Elementary?
wait for elementary. Yeah.
Wait for Juno. Okay.
Buy this and wait. I can't. Do
No,
that.
you can't wait, dude.
No,
Yeah. When it's ready.
ridiculous.
How
Let's
about
do
we take a
Telegram
vote?
message. You need to put Rosa Fresh 10 LXQT.
yeah, that's a good one.
It would fly. Not gonna lie, it probably
It's
fly.
running really well. In fact, Zoom just straight on, no messing about, everything worked.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just
Which
have
one's the
no
Rosa
idea what the
Fresh?
command lines are. I don't know if it uses
I've
Yum
never
or
used
something
Rosa.
else. I'm having to do everything GUI.
Yeah,
Well-
they do use RPM, don't they? Rosa.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So will it be Yum or something?
or DNF maybe, or one of those.
Just depends.
Just try them all.
Problem is, it's a Russian website, so I can't really get a good English version up at the moment.
What's it based on?
Speaking of package managers, I've at some point been able to like use apt on OpenSUSE, so I'm not sure if some distros have multiple installed. Like I think Mageia has DNF and apt installed by default. Like you can use multiple package managers.
I've seen some weird distros like that, non-Arch based distros that use Pac-Man and just crazy stuff like that. I don't know why people do that.
Well, when I open up the software center, it says it's using RPM Drake.
Okay.
Whatever that is.
I could see that.
That's that's based on Fedora then, isn't it? Or Fedora or OpenSUSE. Isn't it? Yeah, RPM. That's them.
RPM's the package format, that OpenSUSE uses, Fedora uses,
and Fedora uses Red Hat.
You said, Chicken, that you were going to try and do Leap 15. Did you ever go at that, or?
I was thinking about it, but the one thing that I don't really like about Leap, because it's usually super solid and super reliable, but what I don't like about Leap is, I mean, even at launch, it's considerably behind, other options. In terms of kernel, in terms of most of the desktop stack. I mean,
so it's like Debian then.
Yeah, it's a fair bit behind. So I went with Tumbleweed. I made an install stick, and I've got like a 2.5 SATA SSD in my computer right now that I ordered not long ago. So I'm gonna end up using that for like my secondary drive, and then this one for my primary. I'm gonna see how OpenSUSE does with it.
Do you use the default partitioning scheme that you get during the install?
I do on my laptop, but I'm going to go ahead and stop doing that. I found that one of the issues I run into, especially with snapshotting, is that it just gets a little unnecessary and kind of heavy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a VM with Tumbleweed in that we do some testing in, and every single time I wake it up, I've got like tons of updates because it's fairly rolling. So, there's going to be loads of updates. And every time without fail, it runs out of disk space because of all the snapshots. And every single time I reboot and I get a black screen and I can't fix it. And it's infuriating. So I just nuke it and start all over again. And I've done that like 5 times. And it's really, really annoying.
What I recommend,
I changed the partition on the latest version. The latest iteration, I changed the partition options, and I don't use snapshots anymore because there's just more headache than it's worth.
Yeah, I lost a VM of Tumbleweed recently too, but I went weeks without updating it, and then a 2000 package update. You can imagine how that went. You reboot, and it's just a black screen, nothing.
Exactly. You know that's gonna fail.
I was gonna say, Derek, you sure you weren't on an Arch install that you didn't update for like 2 years?
Hey, I wasn't live streaming when I did it, though, so that's
wow.
I'm getting better.
Progress. Yeah, I would figure they'd have a little more aggressive kind of cleanup and deletion system, or something that just kind of understood available space a little better, because it really disregards any room whatsoever. It'll just dump everything.
It just does eat your disk. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just distro hop so ridiculously stupid that I've just got my disk partitioned up into 50 gigabyte drives as just root. So I don't have to worry about running out of any space in root or home or var or temp or anything. And if you run out of space with 50 gig, you're doing something wrong.
Well, my VM is 40 gig. My default, whenever I make a VirtualBox VM, is 40 gig, and it always runs out of space every single time.
But does it do separate root and
no?
home?
Well, I don't know. It might do. Yes. I think by default Tumbleweed does do lots of different partitions. Yes, you're right. It doesn't do one big root. Right. It does all kinds of wacky stuff, I think.
It'll have root as BDRFS, and then it'll have home as XFS, and then it'll have like a swap partition that's like aligned with your RAM size, and then one more thing for like LVM.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Well, that's
so, but I don't do that anymore, so I'm much happier.
LVM is dangerous on my machine because I leave a certain amount of space on all my SSDs for, you're meant to leave an empty space. And then along comes a program that uses LLVM or whatever it's called. And then before I know it, there's not a single space left on my hard disk because it's all been incorporated into this new LLVM thing, and it's a real pain to get rid of. So I steer away from that. I don't like that at all.
I both love and hate LVM. It's got some great benefits, but especially for desktop or laptop use, it's pretty much useless. It's just overhead at that point. Like if you're running it on like a large scale system, it's great for managing those different partitions and file systems, but on the desktop, it kind of eats things and breaks things.
What does LVM actually do? Because I haven't really used that.
Logical
before.
volume management. So it more or less, it's like a layer below where you normally put your partitions and file systems and whatnot.
Right. Okay. So interesting.
Yeah. It makes it easier, like if you like slam partitions around on a lot, like, you know, shrink them, move them, throw them to other disks, things like that. It does, if you understand it, make it easier. But honestly, it's a lot of trouble if you don't.
Yeah, well, I never did any of that, so I kind of steer clear from that. So
no, I just do what Zeb does, and I like you, Zeb. I keep a little bit of unallocated space on an SSD NVMe because it recommends that you do that, but I don't use swap. So because I've got 32 gigs of hard RAM, but they recommend that if, you know, well, I don't know if it's the case with this these days, but swap could possibly write all the time or constant. So,
not if you've got 32 gig of RAM, you're probably not using an awful lot of swap much of the time, even if you did have some.
Yeah, and if you get your snappiness down to 10 or 5, it will hardly use it at all.
Yeah.
So you use... Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I've got 64 gig of RAM in this laptop, and I always use swap. Always configure some swap, because there is a problem with the Linux kernel. If you have 0 swap configured, and you get memory exhaustion, which, okay, on a laptop that's got 64 gig of RAM, that's less often, but I do spin up a lot of VMs a lot of the time, and I run a few Electron applications and Chrome, so, you know.
And RAM, Chrome, so there's the real problem.
So my RAM goes bye-bye. But there's this issue with the Linux kernel. If it gets to complete RAM exhaustion, it wants to swap, but it can't, and it gets itself kind of wedged, and you see the kswapd process consuming all of your CPU. Like if you look at top, all of your cores are maxed out running kswapd. If you have even the smallest amount of swap, like a few hundred megabytes or 1 gig, like the smallest amount, that problem goes away completely.
Okay. All right. So I may have to do that.
I mean, it's only something if you've got 32 gigs RAM and you never hit that ceiling, then you're probably okay. But if you ever like float near it, and you put a lot of strain on the RAM usage that you've got, then it can happen. So I always put a little bit of swap, always a little, not like the whole RAM. I wouldn't put 64 gig of swap on this.
No, that's good information anyway, I must say, because even just 1 gig, like you say, and adjust the swappiness down to 10, because I think it's 60 by default or something, isn't it? Swappiness. Yeah.
I think it depends on the distro. I think different distros,
they all set it differently.
Okay, all right. Oh, that's good info. It's good to know.
Matter of fact, one of the distros that I hate as far as setting up swap, the Debian installer always wants to make a swap partition the exact same size as the amount of RAM you have. And you have 32 gigs of RAM. Nobody wants a 32 gig swap partition.
I
have made it better. You could... Sorry, Chicken, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, could I interest you in our Lord and Savior swap file?
Well, it seems like everybody's moving that way anyway, so.
All hell swap file.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a good point, though. What do you guys do for your SSDs as far as any changes in settings once you install the distro? Is there any, like, there's all these things out there to say, hey, do this, put this in the terminal, change this setting.
I don't do anything.
Some of that stuff is outdated because, like, the old installers didn't understand what an SSD was, and they didn't know how to do things like enable trim support. But those things have changed. I mean, SSDs have been around for a long time now, and there was a lot of A lot of people who were very negative about SSDs in the early days, and some of the cheap SSDs were terrible and did die pretty easily. And like, if you bought a laptop with one of these SSDs on the motherboard, like the Asus Triple PC, the like 701, 901, those things, nearly 10 years ago now, those things had cheap rubbish flash storage and they would die. But more modern SSDs and these NVMe ones are just amazing and last longer than frankly, longer than you will live. So don't worry about it, basically.
But I believe most distros now by default have trim set up in a cron job, isn't it?
I don't know if it's cron or whether they just enable it at the installer, turn the trim flags on, so it's done in the background all the time. Each distro is different, and it's it's one of those things that some distros choose to do nothing and let the user like fiddle with stuff, like I guess Arch does, whereas others will try and do the right thing, like the Ubuntu's of the world.
Yeah,
that wasn't a slight on Arch, by the
way. Red Robba has a question for you, Alan. Does a swap file work as well as a swap partition in avoiding the issue you described in the kernel?
So it's one way to get around that problem. So I've had that problem where the kernel swapd processes eats a lot. When I had no swap, I think the reason I had no swap was I made a mistake during the install, or I edited the FS tab or something. I screwed up somehow, and for some reason I had no swap, and it got to this point where all the RAM was exhausted, and I only just had enough CPU that I could type in a terminal just really, really slowly, and the characters are appearing one after the other really, really, really slowly, in order that I could make a swap file. And as soon as I made a swap file, it carried on fine. So yeah, that's one way out of the problem, is to create a swap file, but you can just create a swap file up front, and swap files are a good way to add more swap space if you need it. Like I was installing something on an AWS instance the other day, and it was a fairly small instance, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and it had no swap space configured. And I just wanted to compile something. Now, actually running the software didn't take a lot of RAM, but compiling it took like 2.5 gigs of RAM to compile the thing. And I thought, well, the quick and easy, I could like shut down this AWS instance and create a whole new one that's bigger, or I could just give it a couple of gigs of swap file, do the build, and then throw the swap file away afterwards, which is exactly what I did. So yeah, swap files are great for that.
That's a very good question, actually, I must say.
Disclaimer, swap files don't work on all file systems the way they would on like just standard ext4. So particularly file systems like BTRFS and XFS, they will not support swap files, or swap files won't support them, rather. I'm not sure which way around it is. Those copy and write file systems will not work with swap files, and you will fail utterly and miserably and lose a lot of stuff. So,
Michael in the house.
Hi, Michael.
Hola.
What's happening?
Listening.
Just listening?
Yep.
Yeah.
You look
I'm not much of a talker. I just like to listen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody knows that about you.
Can somebody please go and find the real Michael? He's got to be there somewhere.
What have you done with Michael?
I'm a very quiet person, very passive.
Lies.
This is a very strange episode. Michael's not talking and Chicken's not running elementary. So
that's weird, dude.
I think it's backwards.
Any word on the beta on Juno? Anybody? I'm so like
he was asking the lead dev.
Ready when it's ready, Rocco.
No, I know that, but you know what I mean? I know that.
I've got good news.
Yeah, what's good news?
It's coming soon.
Oh, gee, thanks.
That's helpful.
I'll tell you what.
I can't say anything.
You're killing me.
Did Elementary update their privacy policy yet?
Whoa, no, everyone has updated their privacy.
Oh, I was just making sure.
Everyone. There's a bunch of memes on Reddit now for just about that stuff. It's great.
Well, I thought I get a lot of emails, but I bet Popey gets even more with everything that you've dealt with. I've probably had something in the region of 300 of the damn things.
I've just ignored all of them. My most recent one was from my mortgage advisor, and he sent me a rather aggressive email saying, "This is the last email you will get from me unless you click this link." I'm like, "Yeah, all right, fair enough."
I've got
no problemo.
So, like, what is that the deal that if you don't click it, they're not going to be able to send you no more emails?
No, people misinterpret the law.
No.
There's a lot of misunderstanding of how GDPR works. I am not a lawyer, but as I understand it, you don't have to go around spamming all your customer base. But if they're willing to clean up their customer base, I am fine with this.
Yeah, most people are just, they don't. It doesn't mean that. It means if someone asks them to remove it, they have to. They kind of already had to anyway, but it's more. They're not required to send out this email blast letting people know that they changed this.
Then why is everybody choosing to do it?
Well, they're people just choosing to do it to let people know that they're compliant or whatever.
And some people don't understand the law, and there are some people who've left it until the last minute. Like, this has been in place for a couple of years now, but people have left it until the very last minute of the deadline. And in fact, some companies didn't even bother, and there are some news outlets in the US that didn't even bother doing anything, and all they've done is GeoIP block the EU. So if you're in Europe and you visit some American news publications, you just get oh, sorry, we can't be bothered.
This content is not available in your region.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's like when we try to go to BBC for ITV or something.
Right. I saw one report that one of the American websites, I can't remember which one it was, maybe USA Today or something like that, they actually, for European visitors, switched off all JavaScript. So if you visit from the EU, you actually get a better experience visiting their website because they switched off all the trackers. So
nice,
good work, good work, EU. Yes.
There are many things that this is a good thing, and there are also many things that well, not many things that is bad, but problematic. But overall, it's like it's more beneficial for users. I mean, as someone who does project stuff and building websites for uncountable amount of things, it's the pain, and you was scrambled really a lot if you didn't know, like, if the platform you're using is going to be compliant, and then WordPress announced a GDPR compatibility thing like a week ago. It was like, oh, great, thanks for letting everyone know. You're great. Let's appreciate that.
Yes. Are we all using Linux? I believe everybody in the room here is using Linux. Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
The only thing I run.
The almighty Plasma.
No.
GNOME. That's where it's at.
Wait.
The Plasma.
GNOME.
Every time I try KDE, every time I think I'm going to go back to KDE, I just always have that experience that just isn't, it's just not bringing me back.
Right, it's the best experience. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Do you know, I used to think that. I used to think the same thing about KDE. I used to get frustrated. I used to quip that KDE looked like a bad shareware app from the 1980s. And the reason I said that, and I think I was justified in saying this, although it was a bit mean, was that when you open many KDE applications, or cute KDE applications, there was lots of swathes of gray and lots of gaps between controls, and things were really weirdly spaced out. And it just looked like someone had gone blop, 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 that'll do, and thrown it all on the screen. And that is how I used to feel. And then I tried KDE Neon, and oh my gosh, I did it for like the Jupyter Broadcasting, I did it as a distro test thing on my ThinkPad. And I've kept the same install on there. It's been on there for months.
It's not like Popey has ever been annoyed from me for a couple of years to say, hey, you should try it.
Yeah, that's helped. And I also have one of these to review, a KDE Slimbook.
Oh, yeah, wow. Nice.
Ships with KDE by default.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice. That's an Ultrabook, right?
Yeah, it's very, very, very nice. It's yeah.
And is that just a test machine that's got to go back, or did you buy it?
No, they sent it to us for review. We asked them if we could have one. We met them at a couple of events, the Slimbook guys, and said, hey, we'd love to review one of these things and let people know about what's so good about them. And they're like, yeah, okay. So they shipped that one to me, and Yeah, it's been really good. Well, I think we're going to record a review on the Ubuntu podcast on Tuesday. That'll go out, I think, on the 31st of this month.
Nice.
But yeah, overall impression, really good. But KDE, I am sold. I'm a massive Unity fanboy. I have been for years. But KDE is, the new KDE Plasma is really nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
What you said earlier about it looked like a shareware app. KDE 4 is that is the epitome of that. Like, absolutely, it looked awful. And the only reason I even tried it back in the day was because Plasma 5 announced what it was going to look like. I was like, I could deal with it for a couple months until they actually give me something good, I guess.
Yeah, the icons in the panel are not spaced right. Like, that bottom panel just doesn't look right. The fonts don't look right. Why is the clock font so big? I've never understood that in the KDE panel.
Dude, if you think KDE panel looks bad, I'll show you my GNOME Shell panel. Right?
and you can't change that.
I wish I could show you right now. The icons are just like, one of them has a gap this big, one of them has a gap this big, then there's one this big, then there's one this big. They're all like that.
Well, Plasma is not that bad though. Like the time format is weird, and they make weird decisions, but it's all fixable into fantasticness. How about that?
Totally is. It's all just
so we're still totally waiting for that to happen in GNOME then.
They are fixing it. What are you talking about? They just removed ability to do insert whatever.
Yeah.
Well, so, where
insert any feature.
GNOME's mentality. Features are bugs.
Come on, it ain't that bad.
Hey, Matt.
I enjoy running GNOME. I'm sorry, I do.
What desktop does Matt run? I've never asked.
I can.
Depends on what day you're asking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Usually, it's one of the off the trail, off the beaten path, ridiculous.
I installed eLive today, actually.
eLive.
It's Enlightenment and Debian.
Okay.
It's never a mainstream distro. Let's put it that way.
Of course not.
And did I read that the GNOME were going? Well, they were thinking about taking out the ability to install from files.
Yes, well, a lot of people said that was dumb, and they were like, "Oh, okay."
It wasn't. They were removing the ability to install. It was them removing the ability to double-click executables.
Yeah. So you can't execute a script from the file manager.
Then they realized, oh, that would destroy app images. Oh, our bad.
But you could have still created a launcher for them to work, yeah?
Yeah, Menu Libre.
Yeah, but the way to make a launcher with app images is to launch the app image, and it creates a launcher for you.
Yeah.
But if you can't launch it,
so you're sort of stuck.
No, you can use Menu Libre for that.
Do all of the app images create that shortcut?
Yeah. They ask you if you want to.
Yeah.
But not all of them. It depends.
I don't remember if the Kdenlive did or not. I don't think the Kdenlive did.
It's usually a box that pops up. It says, "Do you want to integrate this app image with your desktop?" And it's just a yes or no.
Right.
Yeah, usually. Yes, Etcher will do that. I know that for a fact.
The format offers it, but the developer has to put it in there.
Okay. Yeah, because 1804 Kdenlive didn't.
Sorry, Rocco.
Go ahead.
If you use Menu Libre to create shortcut, it'll still ask you to put on the desktop. You just say no because you've already done it.
Yeah.
Right.
Menu Libre is a good option, but that is something that you'd have to learn that, one, exists, two, how to work it, and three, how to edit different desktop files. So, like,
fair enough.
In the sense of just wanting to launch it, because all you do is add permissions to launch, and that's how you open an app image. So, like,
and sometimes you don't want to add a desktop launcher. You just want to run a thing. Like, here's a thing, and I just want to run it. I don't want to integrate it with my desktop. I don't want to add a menu. I don't want to do anything. And I think
Minecraft.
Yeah. Oh, there's I guess. In fact, my kids used to come in, and when they would play Minecraft on Windows, and they would double click the icon, and they'd say, "Hey, Dad, do you want to play Minecraft?" And I'd open a terminal and it's like Java --jar Minecraft.jar, and then press enter, and they're like, "Dad, why do you have to do that weird stuff to play Minecraft?" I'm like, "Don't worry about
it." I do the same exact thing.
Prophet in the chat worked out what Dark One uses as his desktop. It's called
the Maniquari desktop, you mean? Yeah, that's usually my preferred desktop.
Maniquari.
Now, GNOME is running out of things to remove from the file manager. The only thing really left for them to remove were the files themselves, and then
or the file manager itself.
The thing I've been having a rough time with Nautilus is, I mean, at one point you could really easily just click, open archives in the file manager, or it would open them instead of extracting them.
Right.
You opened them. Like once that wasn't there, I was like, well, that's a bit crap, because I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with just being able to open up a zip file and not have it just dump everything into whatever directory they're in. So that,
well, I mean, they could. I would rather they open in a separate window, like an archiver thing.
Yeah, that's what I loved. I mean, Windows does that as well.
Well, this is what the Mac does. When you double click a zip, it unpacks it in the directory. So GNOME is just that's what the Mac does. That's what GNOME does now.
Right.
And the Mac has done that for years. So
that's where the inspiration comes from.
I imagine so. And someone somewhere has decided that that's a good thing to do. And like us nerds, maybe we like opening zip management tools, and we reminisce about the fact that we used to get punched in the face with a WinZip dialog when we open a zip file, right? And you like those things.
You like to register that you're
I've never registered, but normal
I forgot about those.
Normal people want to look at what's inside the zip file. That's ultimately the reason why you open a zip file, is to look at the thing that's inside the zip file. And what's the quickest and easiest way to do that? Unpack it. And so it kind of makes sense that would be a default.
I think one of the reasons as well as to why it does that, or why people are trying to move over to that, is because of the way it opens whenever you just open it up to view it. It kind of dumps everything in like a temporary space. I'm not sure if it loads to RAM or if it just loads onto your disk somewhere.
No, it dumps in the current directory. It creates a directory called the same as the zip file and just goes and puts it in there.
No, I mean like the normal version where like you just double click and it opens the window. So it throws all of that in some sort of temporary area, which is unsecured and potentially can get lost.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think that was one of the motivations.
What does Elementary do?
He's forgotten.
It just opens it.
Okay.
It does what Mac does.
I would imagine. Yeah.
No, that's in this particular case. No.
In this particular. Everything else.
But like the opening zip files is like a most common. I mean, it's not a common thing people do. I mean, people even look at. I mean, most Windows users don't even know what a zip file is because of the fact that Windows doesn't show them what the file format names are.
Just looks like a little yellow icon.
Yeah. It's like, hey, this got a zipper on it. What does that mean?
Remember briefcases?
Yeah, briefcase was good. Is that the one where it like backs up everything, and then when you put it back on, if you've made changes away from the computer, you bring it back and it uploads it, isn't it? Yeah, I used to use that. That was quite a good feature, I must say. That worked well.
Didn't they remove it though?
I don't know. I think they did at some point.
I haven't seen it in so long.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I haven't
maybe
seen it in so long either. But that's just because I don't use that system. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
I saw it recently. I only saw it recently because I bought an old laptop off eBay that's running Windows 95, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
Is that the one being used as a concrete slab, like Martin said?
It's holding the door open. Yeah.
What did you put onto it though? What did you put on it?
Well, I upgraded it to Windows 98.
Oh, nice.
In modern times.
Yeah. So
it's pretty zippy, I bet, huh?
It is. It's pretty. Yeah, it's not bad.
I love that pun.
Just give it a few updates.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. The update server is now dead, so if you get a Windows update on it, it doesn't work. But hey ho.
Just
all right, so
puppy on there.
Alan, with the Snap Store, and the whole clickbait malware thing. What's going on with it, man?
Hang on. Clickbait malware.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, this is 2 news cycles ago. I've got to try and get my brain in gear for it. So at the weekend a couple of weeks ago, someone filed a bug saying that there was malware in the Snap Store, and it was a developer who put 5 games, I think, 5 different we'll call them applications, but they're mostly games, in the store, and they had an additional payload, which was a crypto mining application. And as soon as we were told this, we nuked it from the store so nobody could install it. And then we contacted the developer, disabled their account, and republished new versions of the applications. We actually took over the applications, clean build all of the applications ourselves, and republished them in the store without the crypto miner. We didn't publish them with the crypto miner, but pointing to our Bitcoin address. We didn't do that. We published them
that's a missed opportunity, right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, money making scheme.
That's pretty thorough. That's almost as good as my caddy, trunk. But that's good, Alan. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
It took a bit of work because obviously we don't own those applications, so we had to go and get the code for all of those and then rebuild them ourselves. And so it was a fair amount of work, but we thought it was the right thing to do because those people, however small number of people out there had those applications installed with the crypto miner, they probably didn't want the crypto miner. So that's why we cleared them and pushed it to the store, and we moved them to a quarantine account. But this is the first time we've had any malware in the Snap Store, and so this was a bit of a learning curve for us as to what do we do at this point. But yeah, everyone rallied around and sorted it out. But,
I thought you would have called Windows 10 for advice how to clean out the malware, but hey, it worked anyway. So
they haven't figured it out themselves anymore.
So have you sent out a message and really slapped this developer on the knuckles and banned him forever, or what's the sort of punishment for him?
Well, the tricky thing for that is it's very difficult to ban a developer in an open source community, because like anyone could just sign up with a new email address, create a new GPG key, and they are effectively a new person, right? It's not like the Apple Store or the Play Store where you have to sign agreements and letter-headed paper and paying $100. Yeah, all of these things. So we try and make it open for people to put things in the store, but that comes with a trade-off, and the trade-off is it's potentially people can abuse that stuff, and we do some automated scans of things that go in the store, but this isn't one of the things. How do you test for a thing that consumes a lot of CPU? What would you look for? I mean,
badly written code. Yeah.
Some would say Electron apps, right? And those consume a lot of CPU. So maybe we would have banned one of those because they use too much CPU. It's a very difficult thing to do. So for this particular thing, the developer's account was shut down, but there's no guarantee that they won't sign up and create new accounts.
So have you ever worked out how long it had been there before the Linux community discovered it? Because I normally find that that's one of the really good things about the Linux community. They said, like, you've got millions of people out there just doing research left, right, and center. So do they know how long it had been there for?
Yeah, we know exactly how long it had been in the store for. So we know, and we know how many people had downloaded and installed it.
And had they caught it in a relatively quick space of time?
Yeah, it was pretty quick. It was like within a week.
Oh wow!
So, and it wasn't like it was like the most interesting applications. These half dozen applications, they weren't like the most interesting things that would have had a surge in users. So it wasn't like there would have been 1 million users out there all running this thing, and and then we would have had a massive problem. Maybe I'm giving too many clues to people who want to do this in the future. You need to find something really popular if you're going to do this again.
Let me get my notepad.
Yeah.
But there was no shortage of news outlets or even just people in the community ready to jump on it and say, oh, here we go. Snaps, first.
It's a fair comment, though.
Something negative can be said about Canonical.
Goody.
Yeah, exactly.
They could be a part of that. But it's a fair comment. Like, we present all this software in a store, and you should have some level of confidence that you can install something and be, and feel safe. And so, there's internal discussions going on about what we do, and we've posted a blog post about what happened and a bit of a retrospective and some thought about that.
So Linux has one news item of malware, one versus a trillion Windows malware. Oh, the world's gonna end.
That's what people think, man.
I mean, it's not even fair to say it's malware, but Linux has had viruses in the past, but it's always a situation or a vulnerability of some kind or whatever. But it's because it's so rare, it gets attention. Whereas Windows is, there's 1,000 every day. Okay.
When there's some kind of exploit, when there's an exploit in Linux, though, it's usually patched before the news articles are out.
Right. Right. In fact, the app was removed from the store before most people wrote about it. In fact, before any news article had written about it. The first I heard about this, the timeline was the Friday there was a GitHub issue reported, and then on the Saturday morning was when we saw a Reddit thread pop up about it, which was raising awareness of the GitHub report. Now, I was standing in a field watching my son play football at the time, and I just saw this pop up on Telegram. And so we started pinging people inside the company, called the emergency number, because we have an internal, emergency number for these kind of things. And within, an hour of me seeing it online, someone in the store team had removed the apps from the store. And then we took a little bit more time to deal with the situation and
that's
write the power afterwards.
Power of the masses, safety in numbers.
I definitely think that the team as a whole did a great job dealing with this. People that know me know that I haven't really been a fan of snaps very much, but the way this was handled is a really good thing, and it's kind of comforting, if I'm honest. It definitely brings a little bit more trust to the table.
And you've got to think that a user for a long time, people have put trust in distro maintainers, and what we're trying to say is upstream application developers, the people who wrote this code, should be the people you trust. Those should be the people who are the responsible adult in the room for the application, because they're responsible for fixing the code when it goes wrong, rather than having a middleman of a distro person who has to vet what the upstream is doing and gatekeep everything that the upstream is doing. And even then, distro maintainers don't actually review all the code for everything they package upstream. So people feeling like this wouldn't have happened with a deb or an RPM or any other package system is just flawed logic. And it's suggesting that distro maintainers read every line of code that they get from upstream is ridiculous. It's nonsense. No, they don't, right? Especially when you look at applications that, well, let's take an Electron application. If you take an Electron application, it's got millions of lines of code that the upstream developer didn't even write, because they pulled in a whole bunch of node modules. They've pulled in the Chromium embedded framework. There's millions of lines of code in that. So they can't possibly review all of that code. So we're trying to make people aware that you should make an educated decision and whether you trust this developer or not.
Right. Also, the benefits of Snap, though, just the confinement aspects of it. The fact that his snaps were all confined, so just replacing them, that's the solution. It didn't affect other systems or any other packages on the system.
Yeah, it's that feature, being able to just take control of those applications. I was very worried about what we did there. We deliberated long and hard about do we push an update out to these applications, because I don't know if you're aware, a few years ago, Amazon, someone sold a book on Amazon for the Kindle, and Amazon reached into people's Kindles and deleted the book from people's Kindles. And I was very worried that we were effectively doing the same thing. But a book is an inert thing. It's not executing code. It's not crippling your CPU. It's not, burning up your battery. It's a book, right? And
you're also not replacing you're not removing what they wanted. It was replacing it without the garbage, which the developers who put the garbage in wasn't even the developers who made the games in the first place.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He was repackaging someone else's software. But it was something we certainly deliberated about long and hard. It wasn't something that we just went, well, we should just remove it, or we should just reach into these people's computers and like, you know, fiddle bits on their hard drives, because that's like, no.
I agree. So, the Amazon thing was more hilarious because the book they got rid of was 1984.
Yeah, the irony there was not lost. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Of all the books. Yeah. Wow. You know, I was going to say, Alan, during our conversation last month, if I recall, I don't think security or malware ever entered my mind with Linux.
Right.
Which to me as a Windows user, I'm like, yeah, I don't have to worry about it. I mean, that doesn't mean to be oblivious, you know, to the possibilities of it.
But the good thing is, there are people who are looking at these kind of things. So, you know, we do have, you know, people on YouTube and security researchers who are poking and prodding and making sure these things are all right. And that's great. It's keeping us honest.
I trust the social police. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That helps a lot.
Yes. Yep.
Wonderful.
Now, maybe I'm a bit ignorant here, but there's no way of making some sort of something that can test these things, like flag certain words within a packaged application that could find some anomalies that may be in there, or is that not possible?
There are some things that can be done, and I know the Apple and Google stores have vast compute capability to like dig around inside the applications that are submitted. But a big difference between like the Apple store and any application in a Linux store is Apple have a prescribed set of APIs you are allowed to call. And if you go outside those boundaries, they can instrument your application and detect whether you're calling these APIs that you shouldn't be calling or shouldn't be calling it. And they could just knock you out of the store. I mean, you've probably seen recently Valve had an application thrown out of the store because of breach of terms of service. They can just knock you out and say, look, here's our terms of service. You didn't adhere to these, and they'll throw you out of the store. With Linux, we've never had this prescribed set of APIs. It's, you know, we've got libraries, toolkits, we've got all kinds of things that people have developed over the years, but how would you determine, like, you might think, well, something that you install and then immediately eats all your CPUs, you know, that should be blocked from the store. Developer figures that out and goes, okay, well, I'll just eat one of your CPUs. Or maybe I'll only eat your CPU on a Tuesday. Or maybe I'll eat your CPU when it's midnight in the UK and it's, you know, a different time somewhere else. You know, there's lots of things people can work around when you don't have a defined set of APIs that you allow people to call. And in Linux, we don't do that. We say, well, you know, stores are welcome to have any kind of application. It could be Python, it could be Go, Rust, anything. So it's very hard to instrument that kind of stuff and determine whether someone's doing something bad. And it's a long road to go down, because you start checking for one thing and then they'll poke holes in something else, and you start checking for that and then you poke holes in. It's a cat and mouse game, and I don't know that we want to get into that. We'd much rather like try and sandbox the applications so that anything they did will be confined to the little view of the world that the application has, rather than just being able to trample all over everything. And also things like having trusted developers. So we've talked about having like a blue check mark kind of thing that says this is a trusted developer, much like the Play Store has. So you can say, you know, this application came from Google. It didn't come from Joe Blogs or some random dude in Russia or whatever, you know.
Not that ever happens.
And also, didn't this developer mask the application so it looked like it was something else?
That's a good point. Yeah, I did some digging into the application, and it spun up a daemon that ran in the background, and he named the executable, the crypto miner, he named it System D. Mm-hmm. So in the event that you were looking at your system and thinking, wow, my system's slow, and you run top, what are you going to see at the top of the list? System D. And you'd be like, oh, okay. Well, that's normal then. You wouldn't think, hang on a minute. Let's go. Crypto miner at the top of my top. You would have spotted it. So at least he went out of his way to make it like.
I think Alan just called System D a crypto miner.
Wow.
Go install news.
That would explain so much.
I just thought I'd point out, by the way, it's now starting to get light in the UK here.
Yeah. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, you can just see the sky out my window there.
And when I joined, I was shocked to see here. It's like, what time?
I set my alarm and everything.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Nice.
But in Simon's absence, because he's not going to be here this week, he might be back next week. But in Simon's absence, I tried LXQT. I don't know how do you pronounce it?
It's LXQt technically, but it doesn't matter because the LXQt team don't care, and the Qt team care. So
it's a combination of both. So either or.
Oh, hang on a minute. We're not going to end up with some sort of like GNOME anomaly.
We're going to have to. LXQT.
I call it LexiQT just to annoy people.
LexiQt.
LexiQT. Yeah.
LexiQT. Yes. Oh, we're going to have to hit
That's
Simon
awesome.
with that when he comes in.
Anyway,
I like it because if it's the electronic version, it's the LexiQt.
Has anybody tried it yet? The 1810 version?
No.
Did you install the 0.13 LXQt, the new one that just came out?
This was the 1810 image, so I don't know exactly.
Yes,
I did.
that does
The reason that I say it is because I tried to install it, and twice I got an error in the install.
That's
so
what I got.
I don't. You got the same thing?
I've managed to get it installed, but the minute you fire up the desktop, do you remember that old chestnut of, okay, I've opened up, now pick your window manager? And there isn't one that you can pick. The only one that's available is Kwin. Now, why would you want to run Kwin if you just loaded up LXQt?
Because Kwin is a window manager.
Kwin is not required for Plasma. Like,
You can't drop in a shell and sudo apt install.
You can put Plasma in Mate if you want to. But that's not true. You can put Kwin in Mate if you want to. That's more accurate to what I was trying to say in one of them.
Yeah. So as soon as I saw that,
Let's
I didn't
rewind.
bother downloading one. So
Yeah, I'm
the
with you
1810
there, Zip.
Sorry, the 1810 was the one I downloaded, and I told Alan I was having problems with that. So I'm surprised it still got an issue because I thought they may have solved.
Well, okay,
all
to be
those.
fair, 1810 is super alpha beta area thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
right.
I was actually asked by Simon to warn everybody that it is really, really, really alpha. Okay.
Yeah. It's so alpha you can't call it alpha yet. Like that's
I think the word is pre-alpha.
yeah, well, I mean that's
too technical
we
though.
need a more ridiculous word.
Right.
That just makes sense. We need to make something ridiculous.
Right.
It's quicksand. It just sink right in.
LexiQT.
Yeah, but I'm
LexiQT.
thinking Ryan got that installed though. I'm pretty sure he did.
Well, you can use the Ubuntu Next version of 1804 and still get the LXQt version of the 1804, which will be 0.12, and you could try that out, and that would be the better option because that one's actually released.
So
I mean, it's
install
still
it and then
technically
change the
beta.
repos.
Well, I mean, it's available in the I don't know.
It should just.
Hang on. Are you recording this, Rocco? Because
I have this recorded. It's May 26th, 2018. Michael said, I don't know.
Well, it's in the CD images. I just don't know if it's,
I
I don't
know,
know if it's
man.
still there in the CD images, but I know it did when
I
it was,
almost choked on my KDE juice, man. Jeez.
so it
But
should
we
still
wanna-
be in the CD images, but I can't guarantee that. That's all I'm
We
saying.
want to try the one that's actually. We want to try the one that's been worked on, which is the 1810, isn't it? I mean, that's the one.
I don't think. I mean, if you want to try it in the sense of like, if you expect it to work, no, because it's a pre alpha or a LexiQt.
Well, I expect it to start up to a desktop at least. I mean, aren't you allowed to expect that to happen? I mean, you don't
It starts up to a
The whole point
screenshot
is-
of a desktop. It's not
When
actual
it's-
desktop.
it's a pre-alpha.
When it's
You
way
can't
before
expect
even
anything.
alpha, you shouldn't expect
No.
anything. The only thing you should expect is that you can't expect anything.
Look,
Some of you
I
guys
expect
never run unstable distros before. You guys act like you never run unstable before.
I
This is normal
expect
for me. You're talking about no desktop. You know, I'm used to that.
I've tested alphas before after they've been out a while. Some are okay, some aren't. But
Well, I mean, but when something asks you is like, "Hey, we have a release. We would like you to test it." Cool.
right.
Hey,
Yeah.
here's this thing that's not even close to remotely available to test, but if you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just use it as my daily driver. No problem.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
no.
there's a difference there.
But if somebody asked you to test it, you would be assuming that you could at least get to the desktop to test out what they've done.
Or they
Well,
want to, they want you to test to see if you can get to the desktop. And
Right.
Yeah.
Colin,
If it doesn't get
How
that
many-
far,
how many different types of hardware are there out there? How many different types of configurations on laptops do you have between you've got an Intel graphics card and you've got this NVIDIA mobile thing, and it does this god-awful thing of deciding on a whim what it's going to load up at any given time. So, you know, they can't possibly say to you, here's my pre-alpha, it's going to work, use it.
Yeah, I've got AMD, I've got Intel, I've got this one here, which is NVIDIA and Intel. I've got quite a few different ones here. And
I guarantee they work totally different to somebody else who's got Intel and AMD and Intel, NVIDIA and Intel, whatever.
I think the key is wherever you get to, engage with the developers and let them know. Like, you know, but what
do you mean reporting bugs?
Why would you want to report bugs?
Oh, he's not here. Oh,
no, but I did tell Simon. I did tell Simon on Telegram, and he said that this was going back, I think, I don't know, 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, and he said he was going to check that out. So he sort of knew about the fact that it wasn't starting up.
Well, yeah, I mean, every developer wants, every reasonable developer wants people to test it.
Yeah, even if thanks.
Even if it's like absolutely broken and terrible, and and if you're willing to test it and give feedback, then they would love that. But they don't want people to make videos about how this is complete garbage, even though you know, here's a qualifier of like, well, we're not telling people to use it, so it's ridiculous for people, like that kind of thing.
It's worth noting it's also very fast moving. So like if you tested it 3 or 4 weeks ago, you might find that it's completely different now and it's much better or worse. Who knows?
Right.
When did you try and use it, Rocco?
Well, that's what started my woes with my grub. So it was just yesterday and the day before. So I mean, there was nothing to do once the install freezes like that with that error. There's like no way to report a bug. So I did take a picture of it with my phone. So I'll be sending that to Simon.
So
that's
actually,
about all I can do.
There is ways to report bugs if it locks up. We have a Xorg debugging, assuming it's using X, which I think it probably is, and not Wayland. We've had for a long time on the Ubuntu Wiki an Xorg debugging guide. It might not be X, it might be Q, but there's a whole debugging guide that takes you through how you can SSH into that machine from outside, and then run loads of commands and extract loads of data. That might be that they don't want that because they know full well that it's broken and they're well aware of it, and they'll fix it. But getting a frozen laptop or a way that the system is that you can not interact with it in any meaningful way doesn't mean the end of the story. It can be frustrating. You might think, I haven't got time to deal with this, and give up. But there's always things that could be done, either remotely or special key combinations and stuff that can extract information that might make it easier for the developer. Because the big problem, as Michael says, and said, there's millions of machines out there with all different configurations, and it could just be some weird quirk. Like we've had bugs where, like, it's a classic bug where it gets reported, nobody can reproduce it except the original reporter, and then they say, "Oh no, it's working now," and then a week later they update the bug and go, "No, actually, it's happened again," and nobody can reproduce this thing. And it turns out there was some bug in a file format somewhere that meant you can't print on Tuesdays, right? And it was completely bonkers, and it was unrelated to printing, really. But there are, you need to be able to capture that information and feed it back to the developer so that they can then start tracking it. Because if you don't, then it makes it very difficult to like debug and then move forward, really.
Yep.
Well, maybe that's what Simon wanted to know anyway, Rocco, because at some point it did actually start up to a desktop. Prior to that, because I did test it and it did start up to a desktop, but of late it hasn't been going that far. So maybe
this was just on the install itself. So I tried it doing the live thing, and then I tried it just going right to the install, and both times it just stopped with the error. So I don't know exactly what the deal is with it, but I'll get a hold of him and we'll work it out. But I didn't realize there was things you could do if the machine froze.
Yeah, I
Totally.
didn't realize that either.
And
Have you
this
got a
is,
link to that website, Alan?
yeah, I'll ping you a link.
Thank
Part
you.
of the problem is the amount of time you want to invest in this. Like, you know how, like, back in the Windows days when someone had a virus, yeah, you could sit there and think, well, I could spend 3 hours like stripping this down and like finding all the files and ripping them all out and then give them their laptop back. Or I could just bomb it and like nuke it from orbit and just reinstall. And the same thing happens in Linux. People try and install it, they get a black screen and they go, well, I'm giving up on this. When in fact, there are things that can be done. They're not necessarily straightforward things for end users to do, but people like you guys who are testing this stuff out all the time, there are things you can do, especially if you've got more than one computer, so you can SSH in from elsewhere or monitor it from another machine. There are things you can do that can debug those things.
But I'm going to blame that on Linux itself because you guys make it too easy to install. I can have an install up in 10 minutes.
Do you know, I was thinking about that the other I was going to say yesterday, but it's still today for me. I started making a 3D printer and I started looking at all these videos, and people are really, really moving towards like this whole maker thing away from Linux, but partly because Linux has got a lot easier and there is less need for user groups and these like communities of people who help you get the thing installed, because you put a USB key in and generally if it's a stable version you get an install. It works.
I would say though newbies probably still need a little bit of help and guidance. I mean, someone who's totally new to the process, but overall, look, I will never complain about the speed of the installation updates of Linux compared to Windows 10, which takes hours sometimes, you know. But it is easier. Like, say there's a Linux install that's broken or something, you're trying to figure it out. Just reinstall a different version or reinstall it again. It's faster and easier.
Right, and that's my problem. Is that if your time investment is small and your solution to this thing didn't work is use something else.
Yeah.
Well, that thing didn't work for a reason. There is a bug or a bit of missing functionality in there.
Yes.
And if the solution is just push that to one side, like nobody goes, I hate using a car analogy. Nobody buys a car, finds a fault with the car, and then leaves the car at the side of the road and goes and buys another car, right?
Well, that's a very good point.
Nobody
People
does that.
don't do that in the UK. Darn.
No. There's European laws that say we can't do that. But so you know, if you're willing to put a bit of time in and help the developers, then I think it's
right.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that because I'm happy to do that.
And I wonder how many bugs don't get reported because the Linux install is so easy. Because I know if something's going to take me longer than half an hour to fix sometimes, well, I can nuke and pave in 15 minutes and be right back, you know.
Yep.
Well, I had gotten
probably.
I'd gotten a text from my mom today at work saying that she couldn't log into the computer. I do something kind of stupid with my backups where I own the home directory of a particular user, and it's mostly automated, but it does that to where it's set to like whatever media it's going to. So it more or less makes the data itself owned by wherever it's going to, and then wraps it all up, sends it, and then undoes what it did before. Problem with that is, yes, one, it's lazy, super hacky and unnecessary, and two, breaks a lot. And the breaking a lot part is when every time she'd go to log in, I mean, she didn't own her home directory, so she couldn't log in. It would send her back to the greeter. So I had the pleasure of texting commands over the phone to my mom to get, and it didn't work out so well. So there are particular things that I think definitely, you know, there's a threshold of what can and can't be done. But I think especially, you know, like you said, Alan, users like us, we do this all the time. We spend hours of our lives breaking things. So we certainly have.
I resent that. I can break things in less than 5 minutes.
I can do it in one command.
So can't Rocco. Hey, Rocco, go add Lightworks into Solus again, bud.
I don't even need the terminal to break things.
You just need to try to install an app.
Maybe it was good that they took that pseudo out of Dolphin.
No, that's horrible. I hate that in KDE.
It's not horrible.
It is.
You should be able to run your file manager as root.
You know what's great? Is that if you install OpenSUSE, you just click the little button and it opens console with root. You can.
Now that is something I found really perplexing. Actually, if you open the menu and search for the word terminal, which is what I search for on every distro. On SUSE, if you search for terminal, the first one to come up is the root terminal, not the user
crazy.
one.
Yeah. It's horrible.
How convenient.
It's like you have to search for console to get the user one to appear first.
But
I don't understand it.
I was talking to Chicken earlier, and I said to him, I tried SUSE maybe, I don't know, a month or two ago, and it took me a half hour, and I finally gave up trying to get my network working in a brand new fresh install. And I'm like, it's 2018 for crying out loud. Can't we just have the networking automatically working just like every other Linux distro?
Okay, well, it depends on OpenSUSE is not for beginner or like average user types, so it's not going to try to put all the the niceties up front.
Yeah. I mean,
so if you don't, maybe someone networking is hard to argue with, though, because it's like,
I mean, really, dude, this is a network connection. I mean, I'm not talking,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a basic feature of any I don't care any operating system anywhere. It's a basic feature to have, and I'm not talking even Wi-Fi. I'm just talking network.
Talking about just Ethernet.
You
have you ever installed Arch? Because when you do an Arch install, you have no network. Or Gentoo the same way.
I suppose if you're buying a car,
I mean, Gentoo is understandable.
You expect the key to start the car, don't you? Is that
usually, Colin? Usually.
Well, Rocco, you tried to set that up during the installer, right?
I don't remember what I did now.
Well, because it'll bring you back to a window to configure your wireless device, and if you can't get that set up, well, the funny trick about OpenSUSE is you can still install it, and as soon as you install it, there's this awesome thing called YAST where it presents you better and more configurable options to do these things. So when in doubt,
when you want to install something, it only takes the one-click install, which is 12 clicks.
Yeah, it's a lot of clicks.
Well, SUSE used to have one of the best KDE implementations out there.
Years
it's
ago.
Still pretty good, but
that's why I wanted to try it again, because I haven't tried it in a long time. But they used to have a really good KDE, but I couldn't get it installed. I got it installed.
Plasma was the default. It is no longer default.
Yeah.
Wow.
What is default now?
Nothing.
Mate. No, I don't know.
Nothing's default anymore. They're not even checked.
Mm-hmm. If you look at technically, the checkbox is not checked. Yeah. But GNOME is the first option.
No, actually, KDE Plasma is. I just installed it earlier today.
Then then GNOME is checked then, because that's what I was talking to the developers, and they said that they were arguing which one is first and which one is checked.
So they're really just screwing with us at this point.
Kind of. But the other thing is, most of the developers for OpenSUSE have switched to GNOME. So there are a few that left over that are still for the Plasma side. But that's why there's not as much effort being put into it, because most of them switch over.
I see. Okay. That would explain a lot.
Helpy, what's the feedback been a month after Ubuntu GNOME release in general? What's the positive, mixed, negative? They like it overall?
Depends who you ask.
Fair enough.
I've seen ranging from this is what brought me back to Ubuntu to oh my god, they've gone with GNOME to oh my god, they've butchered GNOME.
Oh jeez. Percentage wise, where do you think it falls?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen. I haven't done any kind of analysis of the data.
Okay, I was just
All
curious.
I've just seen like random comments flying by on Reddit and stuff. And
so was it just as mixed as when Unity came out, more or less?
Probably not when Unity first came out, because when Unity first came out, there was a bit of backlash, partly because Unity was a bit broken.
I remember. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ubuntu nowadays certainly isn't like my favorite, and maybe it's not my preferred.
Fine,
but I think
that's that British humor. I love it.
I definitely think the Ubuntu desktop team has done like a lot to make it unique, and it's still definitely an Ubuntu experience.
If it's not your favorite, what's your favorite, Chicken?
Gee, I wonder.
Well, I still tinker with Ubuntu, and you know what? A month later, after the official release, I haven't noticed any crashes. I don't use it every day, obviously, but it works. It looks great. It runs. I wish it was a little bit zipper. You and I talked about it having to need at least a good 4 gigs of RAM to make it, smooth. But besides that, I don't think I've noticed anything really bad about it.
Has there been any backlash from all the people that loved Unity? I would think that would be the biggest backlash.
That really happened 6 months ago, a year ago, when we first announced that the refocus of the company and that we were going to switch from Unity to GNOME as the default. Surprising how many Unity people came out of the woodwork and were like, no. Well, not surprising to me, because people keep telling me all the time how much they love Unity. I hear some negativity online, and I know there are some people who hate Unity. Fine, there are plenty of other desktops for you to use, but there are a lot of people who were using Unity a lot.
I was going to say I'm one of them.
I used it. I'm
using 64 on a Surface Pro 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
Redundantly.
And there's a lot of people who stay on the old LTS releases. We have a lot, like many users on 1404 and 1604 tons.
But hasn't that ended support already? 1404?
No, 1404 hasn't. 1204 did, but we did extended support for people who really want to stay on it.
Well, I know 1604 is 2021, right? For the end of support?
Yeah, 5 years, yeah.
So what would 1404 look like if you installed it? Like, I mean, what kind of versions are we talking here?
It doesn't look a lot different than 1604, to be honest.
Right. It looks like Unity.
The main difference, 1404 has the old Ubuntu software and not GNOME software, because 1604 is where we switched to GNOME software. So, but 1404 looks very similar to 1604, and
I believe the certain graphics certain graphics drivers work better in 14. Some of the AMD stuff, if I recall.
Oh, right.
I forget which one.
AMD had abandoned the FLX or
whatever they were called, right?
Whatever.
So 1404 would be the last stable one for the graphics drivers.
The last time. It was like 2015 area was when they abandoned.
Okay.
We have seen. We have seen quite a uptick in people installing 1804 and people upgrading from 1710 to 1804, because 1710 was an interim release, so it's not a long-term support. And a week after the release, those users will have had a pop-up that says, hey, 1804 is out, you might want to upgrade. A lot of those did. So the number of 1710 users is shrinking pretty dramatically, and they're turning into 1804 users.
I thought the upgrade path wasn't normally available until the .1 release.
The LTS to LTS is enabled at the point 1, but the non-LTS gets enabled about a week after the release. You can override it. You can force it at any time.
Right.
But LTS to LTS will be enabled in July.
I see.
That's when you'll get the pop-up that says, hey, there's a new LTS out. And that's when we'll see another surge in users coming from 1604.
Is the notice going to say, and it's not Unity? And people go, no.
It will definitely say in the release notes things that have changed, because you get a dialog box that pops up with a summary of the release
Well, we know
notes.
Ryan's not going to read them.
Well, there is that. We should do a special tailored version for him that just says, just press this button, dude. Just press this button.
Let's remove the text and have pictures.
Yeah.
It'd be so funny.
Big arrows pointing to a button. Just like,
oh, that's great.
You're welcome for the suggestion, Dust Geek.
This is for Dust Geek. I mean, that would just be awesome. I know you're not going to do it because you've got millions and millions of users, but I'd love to see the look on his face if you did it.
Did you guys
he would both be excited and appalled at the same time.
Sorry, Colin.
Did you guys change a little bit the way the Ubuntu dock integrates from 1710 to 1804? Because it seems to work a lot better on the 1804, and it doesn't seem to be a little bit confused when you're running a dash to dock or dash to panel as it was in 1710.
I don't know any specifics. It's possible.
Right.
Desktop team did a lot of work to iron out the bugs that we discovered in it. So 1804 is a bug fix release for 1710, basically.
Yeah.
It's like 1710 was, let's get this release out that's got GNOME Shell by default so people can try it out, figure out if we've got the selection of extensions right, and we've picked the right selection of apps and so on. And then 1804 is right, bug fix.
Yeah.
So 1804 is fixing all those bugs, and I'm sure we'll find more, and those will get fixed over time, over the next 5 years.
Definitely, the extensions work a lot better in 1804 than what they were in 1710. They integrate.
I noticed that. I have noticed that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I was curious about was when I used Ubuntu 1804, I noticed that Nautilus itself was a snap.
No.
Or no?
Ubuntu Budgie has their file manager as a snap.
I see.
No, that's the welcome thing.
Yeah, that's the welcome is a snap.
So there's Ubuntu Mate has welcome and software boutique, and Ubuntu proper has a few GNOME applications, calculator, system monitor, calendar, and a couple of others. And part of the reason, we get a bit of flack. People are saying, why are you installing snaps by default on Ubuntu 1804? What's the point? And what people have got to remember is people run, like I said, people run these LTSs for a long time. And if we put things in as snaps, then we can update those things over those 5 years. Whereas if you go back and look at 1404, on the day 1404 came out, all that software was nice and new and fresh. And now, 4 years later, it all looks dated and old and rubbish because we can't go back and fix those because that's a stable release. And our update process doesn't allow us to put newer versions of applications in that old release. Whereas by putting them in as snaps, we can keep revving those things up. So you could install 1804 and in 3 years' time, you'll have the latest and greatest on a system that was made 3 years ago.
And potentially, they could install 1604 and do the same thing if they want.
Yeah, totally. You can do the same thing. But the nice thing about the 1804 installer is it's got this minimal install, so it rips out stuff that maybe some people don't use. I don't really use LibreOffice anymore, so I did the minimal install because there's stuff there that I just don't use anymore.
So Snap's becoming a new universal fix-all package software, or is that the goal, or
it doesn't. It's not intended to replace everything. It's really the idea is the keyword we use is leaf applications. So things at the end of the branches, not libraries, not like fundamental things that are used by other applications, but an application. So your browser, your terminal, your Office client, your IRC client. I'm just looking at all the things I have open here, which are all snaps. So my browser, Telegram, IRC Cloud, Slack, and whatever else I've got open. So productivity and all that. So all of those make sense to be snaps, because if you install 1804 today and you install some, like a popular application that I quite like is called Notepad QQ text editor, right? So I can install that on here and know that for years to come, I'll constantly get updates, and that wouldn't have happened with the debs in the archive.
Okay, all right.
You would have had to go and find a PPA, which was just
right.
How does Ubuntu Budgie work their backports then? Because they've got a backport in their distro, which backports a few applets.
Their backports are very different because they say that their backports are typically like the polish and the applets and stuff like that, but not specific applications.
Yeah, just the applets. Yeah, that's right.
So it's really interesting the way they do it because in theory, as long as they're compatible with the version of Budgie that's available in that particular release, they could backport the applets and everything to any version at all. So if like, for example, if 1910 comes out and it's compatible and it has a version of Budgie that is compatible with the version 1804, they could backport it to 1804.
Right.
Yep.
I think an interesting opportunity, and one of the things, probably the main thing that pushed me over to Snaps was things like FFmpeg. Like when I heard about that, I was immediately thrilled because it's something that I use like daily. And being able to just install that, get the newest, most up-to-date version, and being able to point applications that I use that utilize FFmpeg to the newest, most up-to-date version of that without having to kind of screw up other things on my system that, either integrate with it in some way or touch it in some way. And that was incredible. Like it didn't break anything, something I was worried about, and it was fine.
Yeah, it's a good example of one of those things that is fast moving and gets out of date in the archive very quickly. If you install 1404 right now, I've no idea what version of FFmpeg you'll get in there, but it'll be old and crusty and probably full of spiders. So
I don't know which version, but I know it's in the 2.x branch.
Right. Whereas if you install Ubuntu 1804, you get the 3.x branch, but you install the snap, you get 4.x. And and then in a year's time 5, and then in 2 years time 7, and so you'll just keep getting that flow of updates, which is I appreciate there are Arch users shouting at the screen now going, "Duh, we have all these updates all the time, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, but then they have breakages all the time.
Well,
yeah, because that's right, because you're not it's not cross-pollinating anything, is it? It's on its own. You can try it out. You can even have 2 or 3 versions of the same application and try it
seems
out.
like with Arch, they're also updating the breaking process of the apps that are not fully tested sometimes. I mean, I tried Manjaro a couple of years ago as a full install. I had to give up. Now maybe it's better now, but I couldn't deal with it.
Very much better now.
I don't know.
Manjaro is really nice.
It's strange to hear you guys criticize Arch when y'all were talking about pre-alphas a minute ago. I would never put something like that on my machine, a pre-alpha.
Yeah, but we're talking secondary drives here, man. We're not talking main machine.
The things that
Rocco, come on now. You
and
put it on
also
your main
pure testing rather than just like the normal.
Yeah.
Well,
these things that contribute so much to breakages, though. I mean, these are things that fundamentally work differently in Ubuntu than Arch. I mean, when you update stuff with Arch, I mean, you're not just updating small components or things that are known to work with other components. Like it's all going at the same time, right? This depends on this version of that, which depends on that version of that, and vice versa.
And it's pretty much impossible for them to test everything anyway.
Couldn't you just roll on Ubuntu? Couldn't you just stay on the development release every time and just keep going?
You kind of could.
Yeah.
You kind of could, but because we cut a release every 6 months, everything slows to a stop. And then you switch, and then everything slows to a stop again. And because it's not rolling, you're not getting the constant flow of updates. You're getting like a big peak of them as we synchronize from Debian after the release, and then they tail off. And then there's a peak when they do a load of testing, and another peak. So it's not as flat and it's more choppy than Arch. If you ran a development release of Ubuntu.
All I remember with Arch, one of the last things I remember I turned on, enabled the AUR, and this pop-up came up. I made fun of it. This can be dangerous to your system. And for some reason, the first thing that popped into my mind was a fire extinguisher. So I made a joke. If you're using Manjaro, make sure you have your fire extinguisher. And that Spatula was like, you do not need a fire extinguisher to try Manjaro, But that could be scary to a new user. I mean, well, I'm not going to do this.
Well, a new user
think
shouldn't
it's
touch
somewhat
it.
necessary.
Yeah, I was going to say they shouldn't be using the AUR. Actually, Toss,
They shouldn't be on Arch. Period.
I was going to say, Toss, that reminds me of the comps config settings manager when they put the warning in there. This can break.
Somewhat necessary.
Right.
Even if the intended target isn't particularly new users, with any distribution, I think it's definitely a nice courtesy of maintainers and the people working on this to at least put the warning there for anyone that could potentially be stumbling along it, or maybe doesn't understand that concept, because even experienced users don't understand absolutely everything about a system, and not every Arch user utilizes the AUR.
Well, doesn't Ubuntu warn people about PPAs? I mean, they put warnings out there about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's
but
definitely
PPAs
a
are voluntary, though.
Well, so is AUR.
But so is the AUR. You don't have to enable that repo.
Well, I mean, because
if you want software, you do. I mean,
yeah, if you don't want to have any software, you can not enable it. Yeah.
Well, with snaps and flat packs, I mean, you could get by with it almost.
And Manjaro has the reason why Manjaro or Interiors even is an issue is because they make the AUR access incredibly easy.
Yeah, it's super stupid.
I don't recall ever having, or not too many, looking for PPAs in the latest Ubuntu. Everything seems to be in the like in Synaptic or the Software Center, like 99%, which is awesome. If not, they'll look for a snap or whatever.
Right, but it won't necessarily be the latest version. Like, especially if you're running like 1604 now.
Okay,
like you won't have the latest version of, especially if you're browsing the net and you see a news article that says, "Hey, there's a new version of this music player," or "There's this new version of this video editor," and you think, "Oh, that's great," and you're running Ubuntu and you're 2 years out of date. So
but new isn't necessarily better or stable. So.
True.
But also
sometimes and old isn't necessarily better.
That is true. Usually, I downloaded the app image for Kdenlive Live just out of curiosity. I had the older one, which worked, but the new one works. I'm like, well, which should I go with the new one because they both worked. But the new one, there is no snap for Kdenlive Live. I saw that there's a flat pack and an app image. I think.
Yeah, it's in the works.
App image is the only one.
It's in the works. Okay.
So the other thing to consider about whether you run the latest version of software or not, right?
Yeah.
Is look at it from the developer's point of view. Like if you're the developer of a music application, and along comes Toss with this thing doesn't work, this is broken, this is slow, or whatever. That developer's like, I released that 2 years ago. I'm not going to maintain that anymore. I'm one guy developing this application. You should use the latest version because that's where all the things that you've talked about are fixed. You're wasting my time.
Right.
You should be using the latest version. It's very frustrating for developers to have old versions of applications. There's a guy who made X Screensaver, for example. The Screensaver thing. He's requested that Debian remove X Screensaver from their archive because it's so old, and and it's got his email address in the Screensaver pop-up. And people email him and say, "Oh, the Screensaver's broken" or whatever, and he's like, "That was released years ago."
Yeah, they removed some of his stuff. Yeah,
stop using version T-Rex, and maybe that'll help you out. But
but you understand the problem. The problem for a developer point of view is they generally want people to use the latest stable release of their software so that they can support that.
So I have the same exact experience with my application. We have people who are still using, like people who use Mint are using stuff that's very old unless they have a PPA. That's just like the default because of the LTS thing. But we have people who are still using 17.x of Mint coming to us and they're like, "Hey, we found this bug." And they're like, "Yeah, we fixed it 3 years ago."
Wow.
So is Snap better or worse than say like an app image, or it's just not really? It's just a matter of choice.
They all have their own advantages and disadvantages.
Okay. All right.
Pros and cons.
I like app images. Our app images work really well.
I guess if you want the latest of a software, just compile it yourself.
I'll get my non
aspect ever. Yeah.
Yep, that's my favorite compiling.
Yeah. If you want the best car, go and build it yourself.
Yes.
So then we all would be learning things from scratch at that point.
That's why I drive a kit car. Get all the parts, put it together myself.
It's called modular.
It's a modular car.
Yeah.
But like as far as like the formats, they all have like their pros and cons, and I think app images are the best currently right now for the task of regular users wanting to get something easily and quickly. But they have their own big problems that I think overall, fundamentally wise, Snap has the best, future aspects. Because like the fact that app images don't have the ability to, like, there's no security confinement of any kind. There's very little update ability. Like some app images have update functionality and some don't, because it's not a requirement to use an app image to have it. So 90% of them don't have it. And when they do, it's when I find app images that have it, it's shocking to me. Like, oh wow, they actually did this. And where Snaps, it's an automatic update system.
Well, I did see on Cade and Live's website, please don't use the previous version of app image. Use this one, the .1 or something. So I'm like, okay, I deleted. Right. So there's your update that way, I guess.
But that's an update that you have to choose to look if there is an update.
It's a manual. It's not an automatic, right?
Well, it's just automatic, but it doesn't even tell you.
Well, I got to find it, right? Yeah. No, I just happened to be browsing through Cadence through the website. Oh, there's one there. So, but you're right. That's not as convenient as But
there are some app image applications where they will notify you that
and not spend all day tinkering, trying to fix something. Now, if you're tinkering to experiment on your own, that's a different ball game. But if I just wanted to get stuff done, like edit videos or whatever, you just want it to work. Want it to work.
Some instabilities, all right. I like my OS to keep me guessing.
Yeah, sure.
It's that Southern mentality, man. I like things to break down there,
I like the challenge.
Yeah.
I like.
Well, then go fight a shark.
It's not.
Go wrestle a
I've already
shark.
challenged that.